Hello and welcome back to the Cars Ireland YouTube channel, where today I am joined by Ross Smith, otherwise known as the virtual driving instructor on Instagram, where he posts really helpful tips and insights for any drivers looking to upgrade their skills. And today we're going to talk about what makes a great learner's car. I brought with me this brand new Fiat 600 hybrid, which we're going to get inside and chat about some of the features which can help new drivers feel more confident on the road. Shall we?
Absolutely.
So in terms of the size car that you learn to drive in, what do you think is best for a learner?
I think if you're very nervous on the road, you should be going for something a little bit smaller. If you're a little less nervous, then go for something that, well, not that you have to go for it, but something a little bit bigger will do you just fine. Most learners feel quite large on the road regardless of the size. So if they do want to feel a little bit smaller, or like they have a little bit more room in their lane, smaller is better. So like a Polo, a Fiesta, an i10 or an i20. And then if you're going for mid-size, like a Golf, a Focus,
that kind of range.
Yeah, that kind of range,
so you think it's probably better to start small and ease your way up to the bigger ones?
Yeah, especially when you're getting into like saloons, which have the much longer back, very nerve-wracking when reversing, because unless you've got the luxury of sensors and stuff like that that are going to make you aware of where it is. But it's a psychological thing. Like when they sit in it, they just imagine that they're in a much bigger machine than they really are.
Absolutely. This is bringing back memories definitely of learning to drive, and you'd see like what's probably a considerable gap and you feel like you're trying to squeeze through as if you're driving a big bus. But it is, like you said, it's all about just kind of finding your bearings and placing yourself on the road. So if you were to design the perfect learner car, what features would it have and what would you leave off? What's not necessary?
So some things that are very helpful for learners are like the auto handbrake. It's very reassuring when you're in sticky situations or pressured situations that the car absolutely isn't going to roll back. Although it will spoil you if you ever get into a car with a handbrake, you are going to have problems. That's nearly a guarantee. So it's a great feature to have, but if you anticipate you're going to be using a handbrake at some point, then you're probably best just going with the handbrake from the get-go. And blind spot mirrors, absolutely, without a doubt, one of the most invaluable things you can have on your mirrors, because they show you so much more of what's beside you. So when you're reverse parking in between two sets of cars, you can see nearly the whole car, rather than the big mirror kind of only shows you a fraction of the car. So you have a much better idea of where you are.
And is that something that you'd have to buy and fit to your car? Do some new cars come with it?
You can get them for like between €5 and €10 on Amazon. You stick them to the mirrors, and you can get the ones I prefer, the ones you can adjust.
Okay.
So you can set them so they're really covering the blind spot, and then let's say you're maneuvering, you can kind of just give it a little poke and it'll fold back in, and then you can see a lot more of your car.
I'm kind of amazed why they're not just on all cars anyway.
Yeah,
it
but
makes so much sense.
They're on buses, they're on trucks, they're on vans. Like they all have some sort of blind spot mirror, but for some reason cars just get left with these lads.
Okay, and is there anything that you think that a learner could do without?
Some of the fancy stuff like lane assist, cruise control, speed limiters, like just absolutely not needed.
Don't think I've ever met anyone who's a fan of lane assist.
Yeah, no, it feels like something else is in control of the machine you're supposed to be in control of. And me personally, I don't like giving the car that control. Like I always want to feel like I'm in control of it. If I feel a little nudge, I'll actually get a little bit annoyed at the car. Like I can nearly get angry with it. Like, don't do that to me. Like, don't shove me out of the lane. Like I'm well in control.
I know what I'm doing here.
Yeah, or sometimes the hazard thing will pop up at the wrong time. I'll be on the brake, I'll be slowing down perfectly, and then beep, like it pops up and I'm like,
giving out to you for no reason.
Yeah, it's like I was well in control. But like the hazard stuff does help, like in the really bad situations.
Yeah. And then obviously cruise control and stuff is not going to be too relevant to a learner who can't go on the motorway yet.
No, not at all. Learners kind of struggle to put on wipers most of the time. So looking for a cruise control button and then plus and minus and set and cancel, it's way too much. Like most learners in my car have never asked me anything that's on that steering wheel. Literally none of the buttons are relevant to them because they're too focused on what's ahead, the pedals, the gears, not cutting out, putting on lights, wipers, demisters. That is plenty for a learner to have to deal with.
Exactly, as you should be on when you're first starting out. So what is more important for a learner, a car with loads of gadgets or one that keeps things simple?
Simplicity is key for a learner. There's too much on their mind already. They don't need all them extra bells and whistles on the car. They need to just get used to the basics, focus on the primary controls and the secondary controls. And when they get really comfortable with them, like when driving becomes nearly second nature, like you don't have any anxiety about it, you can comfortably jump in the car, no questions about it, then maybe start adding in some of them extra features that they're kind of jazzy, you know. There's a lot of nice sweet things you can get in cars nowadays. There's lots of nice tech, but you should definitely learn how to do it yourself, then have the extra features that the car can help you with.
Yeah, so as you said, it is a good idea, you think, to have the basics down, because as we all know, things like handbrakes are becoming a thing of the past, or
Yeah.
more of as are gear sticks, to be
Yeah,
honest, with the kind of the rise of electric cars. And so in your opinion, do you think it would be better for a learner to have those basic skills of old school skills, we'll say?
for sure. For sure. Because you need to be able to, if you ever are in a situation where you need to get into a car that maybe you started with an auto handbrake and now you've got a car with a handbrake, it's going to be a bit of a curveball. There's now going to be a spike in anxiety of like I don't actually know how to properly use this.
Yeah.
It seems simple. You pull up and you push down, but when you're on a hill, it's not as simple as just pull up and pull down.
No, the dreaded handbrake start. I still have memories of that from my
Yeah.
own driving lessons. Okay, are there any standout cars for you that make it easier for that are easier for learners?
Absolutely, there is. There's some cars that are very learner friendly, and then there's some cars that just aren't. And it's not. I'm not going to talk about reliability. That some of these cars that I mentioned are very reliable, but they're not great for learners.
Okay.
So, like people who have experience in them will push them onto learners, not really understanding that it's actually much harder to drive than they think.
Okay.
So things like the Toyota Yaris, that's one of my least favorite cars to learn to drive in. Although it's
Really?
one of the most popular and reliable cars out there, very, very tough to drive in. Nissan Micra, Hyundai i10, Hyundai i20. The main reason is that the gas pedal is very sensitive.
Okay.
So you hear it scream really quick with the tiniest bit of pressure. And usually the clutches are quite weak as well. So stalling just happens so much more. And the more that happens, the lower your confidence is, and the less likely you think it is that I'm going to get to a point where I'm really having success. Cars that are really good to drive in, I'm quite biased to the Volkswagen Golf. I did hand select that car to be as forgiving as possible.
Okay.
Had a very funny test drive with the guy from the dealership. I was forcefully stalling the car and seeing how well would it pick back up. The Ford Focus is a great car. One of my absolute all-around favourites for learners though is a Ford Fiesta from like 2009 up to about 2017.
Okay.
Brilliant car for learners. The gas pedal is reasonably stiff, so you can put a bit of pressure on it and it's not going to go crazy. The clutch, you can nearly get the thing going on its own, even in a petrol. That's usually the case for all diesels, but you can lift the clutch, it will give you a nice pull, tiny bit of gas, and you're rocking away. So the Fiesta is without doubt one of my favourites to start in because it's small, it's nimble, it's not very distracting on the inside, and the pedals are really, really forgiving.
Okay, so it's all about kind of getting that biting point. And
Yeah.
so this is all kind of to do with manual cars. So obviously there's a lot more new cars are automatic
Yeah.
now because a lot of them are hybrid, some of them are electric. What do you think is best for a learner to learn to drive in, given the way that we're going?
I think size would be the best thing to look for when you're going for an automatic because you're not going to have a whole lot of trouble with the pedals. The gear sticks, some gear sticks are a bit funny, so make sure you're comfortable with the gear sticks because I know like the IDs have like a on the top right.
I don't know where I'm going to find one next. Honestly, there's somewhere different in
like,
every car.
This one here is a couple of buttons on the dash.
Yeah.
I know Teslas have this whole scroll up and down thing, and if you're comfortable with it, you're going to have a much better time. But I'd say like the size and shape in it and how you feel in the car is going to play a big role. A lot of people like smaller cars, but something that does have you a little bit taller can help. You kind of feel like you can see a bit more. But the car control isn't going to be much of a problem, so it's really about how do you feel about the rest of the car. Like most of your driving is going to be at the feet and at the steering wheel. So if you're comfortable with all that and you're comfortable with the width and size of the car, you're generally going to be okay.
Okay. A lot of young people obviously use their parents' car to learn how to drive. Is it worth investing in your own kind of smaller car, or if that option's there for you, how do you think?
I think either or works, really. If the parents are going to be very, very sensitive about the car, so let's say if your mom or dad's a car enthusiast and they're very precious over their car, maybe not a great idea to get insured on that because it's just going to cause lots of screaming matches in the car. And you may make a ding or two on the wheels, so it's not a conversation or a discussion you want to have with your parents coming home and being like, oh, I've left a scratch on the car.
Or maybe the parents need to just be aware that might happen.
Yeah, they just need to accept that like they're learning, you know?
So do you think it's probably worth investing in your own car?
Yes, 100%. There's never going to be a downside to investing in your own car because you have the freedom to just get in and go. You know, you don't have to worry about parents being at work or the car not being available. When you finally do pass the test, the first thing you're going to want to do is get out with your friends. You know, get out and do a road trip or go out on a drive on your own where you don't have an instructor or a parent yap, yap, yap in your ear the whole time.
Oh, I remember that feeling well. Obviously, buying a car as a learner driver is going to be expensive. Budget can a lot of the time be an issue. Like, what would you say are the, let's say, 3 non-negotiables when it comes to getting your first car?
For your first car, for a manual specifically, the 3 most important things about buying a manual car: is the gas pedal or the accelerator too sensitive for you, or does it have a bit of forgiveness in it? Is the clutch reliable, in the sense, not that it's going to go forever, but when you lift it up, can you be a bit rough and it still goes? And then the gear stick being easy to maneuver. There's some cars that have, like, it feels like the tiniest gap between each gear, and that can be quite stressful because you have such small room for error. You slip into the wrong gear, and confidence just drops when you make mistakes when you're driving, because you understand there's big consequences if I get any of this wrong. You know, I could end up in a bit of a sticky situation. So a really reliable or a really forgiving gas pedal, a really forgiving clutch, and a fairly handy gear stick. Even in the tough gear sticks, you will get used to it eventually. And with the automatic, you really just want to be looking for something you're comfortable in. So make sure the size suits you, make sure that you're not getting into a big tank and you don't like big cars. Like, find something that you feel comfortable in, and that's really all I'd look for in an automatic. In terms of, like, engine and stuff, I'm not a mechanic, so that's a different conversation you're going to need to have about reliability.
Yeah, something that you're comfortable in, so take it for a test drive if you can, and make sure that you're going to be comfortable.
And test drive a few. Like, when I was looking for a good learner car, one of the things I did was I spent a week and I rented 2 go-cars a day.
Wow.
Because it was €7 for each drive. I got to play around with it as much as I wanted, and I found out which cars had weak clutches, which had really sensitive accelerators, and I looked for something that was kind of a nice middle ground.
And we've landed on the Golf.
And we've landed on the Golf.
As we so often do.
That's exactly it.
Okay, final question for you, Ross, is on the whole manual and automatic thing, because let's say there's definitely a shift towards automatic now because of hybrid and electric. Do you still think it's a useful skill to learn to drive manual?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit less necessary than it used to be. There is a lot more vehicles on the market now that are just automatic, so they're much easier to get. Them costing more, like, there used to be the argument of they cost a lot more to fix, which, like, is still a little bit true, but they're definitely more on par with the manuals now than they used to be. But it depends on career, is the one thing I always tell people to consider. Like, if you think you're going to get into a career where you're going to need a license, like, let's say you're going to be a plumber or an electrician, like, if you're going to work for a company, they genuinely have manual vans, and that's still the regular in the industry. But if you don't think you're going to be getting a company car that might only have manuals, then there's not many restrictions really that the automatic's going to pose on you. Maybe when you go abroad, you might have a little bit more trouble in some countries, but automatic is kind of the norm everywhere, but like us, the UK, China, and don't know the rest of the countries.
Yeah, I guess manual just leaves your options a little bit more open.
Yes, for sure.
Ross, that's been absolutely great having you, and thank you so much for all that insight.
Thank you for having me.
Anybody who's looking to hear more from Ross, as I said, excellent tips for any learner drivers or just drivers looking to improve their skill set. Check out Virtual Driving Instructor on Instagram.